Working in the hospital as an emergency room nurse, I'm required annually to renew certain certifications, be tested on how various pieces of emergency equipment work, review and be sure that certain basics are mastered. We also advance our knowledge and skills in techniques and practices that I may need to use in a moment's notice without hesitation or delay. I need to do these things to stay employed, but if that were my only motivation, I would be a pretty poor nurse. So what is the better attitude for me to take? I do it for you and for anybody else who might need emergency services so that the best possible care can be delivered as quickly as possible. Lent is a time for us to focus on the virtues, those basic skills that we need in our spiritual lives, so we can respond quickly and without hesitation to whatever God is calling us to do in any given moment. Being more virtuous helps us to avoid sin by knowing and doing what is right, no matter what the cost. What if you or a loved one was brought to the emergency room and I rushed in with a piece of equipment? I get it into position, I plug it in, and then I break out an instruction manual and start reading it. I would think you might get a little upset, lose a little confidence in me. Not being trained and ready could, in a worst-case scenario, cost you your life. Training helps to avoid negative outcomes and can guarantee that everything possible was done. And just as training strengthens us to know the right thing to do in an emergency or accomplish a certain task, fasting strengthens us in self-control, virtues, and humility. Lent is an opportunity to focus on the important things in our spiritual lives. Fasting should help us to renew where we are spiritually, review those basics, recognize and eliminate vices, learn more about God and ourselves, recommit to our prayer lives, and advance our training in the practice of virtues, all to increase God's grace in us and help save our immortal souls. These 40 days is a perfect time to do this. This is not a time to skate on through saying, I'm giving up chocolate for Lent, or some other small pleasure that's not really such a big deal. If you do, you're squandering the great opportunity of Lent. It'd be like having a 3-day park hopper to Disneyland and never leaving Main Street. This is an opportunity to improve our prayer lives, eliminate vices, learn to be more merciful, forgiving, and live more virtuous and humble lives, and help secure our eternal salvations. So what should we be doing for our Lenten fast? The beginning of Isaiah chapter 58 is an example. This, rather, is the fasting I wish. Releasing those bound unjustly, untying the thongs of the yoke, setting free the oppressed, breaking every yoke, sharing your bread with the hungry, sheltering the oppressed and the homeless, clothing the naked when you see them, and not turning your back on your own. So if you're intent on giving up chocolate for Lent, how about buying a few pounds of it and taking it to a women or children's shelter, helping to ease the pain of those bound unjustly and loosening their yoke? Maybe it's time to clean out your closet. Items you haven't worn in the last year could be a great blessing to those using a homeless shelter. Our fasting can also be giving up a lesser thing for a greater thing. So how does that work? Well, that morning cup of coffee you get from your favorite barista Monday through Friday. What if you gave it up? Now, if you're afraid of caffeine withdrawals, how about making your own cup of coffee and drinking that instead? And take that $60 to $100 a month to the poor, to the church, or an organization that helps promote gospel values. That would be giving up a lesser thing for a greater thing. Staying in touch with friends on Facebook at the end of the day may be a good thing. But what if you instead took 10 minutes at the end of the day and in prayer and reflection do an examination of all the things you did that day, the good and the bad? Did you react with impulsive selfishness or with courageous virtue? What went well? What could you have done better? Then resolve to improve in those areas where you failed by paying closer attention to that vice's opposite virtue, and then discuss it with your real BFF, God. How well are you prioritizing things that are really important to your soul? I'm sure you know who won the Super Bowl. Do you know who the winning quarterback was? Do you know how many career games he's won? Do you know the 8th commandment? Where your soul is 100 years from now will probably depend more on that last question than the prior ones. So what if you turned off the TV a little earlier and maybe spent 5 minutes a day reading the catechism? Or blow the dust off that coffee table Bible and read a chapter a day of the Gospels? Or how about reading a good spiritual book? The Spiritual Life by St. Francis de Sales, The Imitation of Christ by Thomas à Kempis, or one of the many modern books by Bishop Robert Barron or Scott Hahn. What if you made some time during the week to spend 30 to 60 minutes to pray in your church or at an adoration chapel, resting and listening in the quiet for God's voice? Maybe you and your family could take some time helping at a soup kitchen, women's or homeless shelter. Do you get angry on your drive to work or other places? Honking your horn at those who cut you off? Do you race through traffic, cutting in front of other people? This could be a sin against charity. Do you compound this sin by using the name of God in vain when you cut another car off and you have a honk if you love Jesus bumper sticker on the back of your car? If you're driving uncharitably, you could try fasting by leaving 5 minutes earlier and commit yourself to a peaceful drive without unnecessary lane changes. Only you and God knows what is truly trivial in your life, yet consumes a disproportionate part of it. Texting, Twittering, watching TV, playing video games, surfing the internet? Do you do any of these things at work that takes time from your professional obligations? Or is it something darker and hidden, such as alcohol or pornography? These are some of the many things that can add distance between you and God. It's amazing that we usually think we are doing what's making us happy right now. But to be more closely connected with God and avoid sin, helping others will bring us more real happiness than we can imagine in this life and the next with the grace of God. But for all this to happen, we need to be humble and take an honest look at ourselves, where we have sinned and failed the love of God. We need to turn to God and pray, as in the psalm reading for Ash Wednesday. Have mercy on me, O God, in your goodness. In the greatness of your compassion, wipe out my offense. Thoroughly wash me from my guilt, and of my sin cleanse me. So how should we start? How about a good examination of conscience? In the hospital, we constantly have reviews of cases and procedures, how we handled them, what went well, what didn't, and how do we make it better the next time. This is the same goal as a good examination of conscience. It should help us to review events since our last confession, see how we handled them, what went well and what didn't, and how to make it better the next time. Confession is the next step, taking all our failures of love and virtue to God and telling them all to Jesus, admitting our faults and taking responsibility. Then, with a renewed and clean heart, we'll be better equipped and updated to go forth to love and serve God in the daily occurrences of our lives. As the end of Isaiah 58 says, "Then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your wound shall quickly be healed. Your vindication shall go before you, and the glory of the Lord shall be your rear guard. Then you shall call, and the Lord will answer. You shall cry for help, and he will say, 'Here I am.'"